Behaviorism, which gained popularity at the start of the 20th century, theorizes behavior occurs due to environmental factors, not mental state. Therefore, all behavior learnt can be unlearnt through conditioning, which relies on consequences using positive and negative reinforcement. Behaviorists do not explore why a behavior is happening, as they believe cognitive processes are irrelevant and inaccessible. Instead, they believe psychology should be scientific, observable, and measurable. Learning is an observable change in behavior resulting from experiences. There are two main concepts: radical behaviorism, which explores the importance of stimulus and response, and social learning, which believes behavior develops by watching others and modeling behavior, known as the knowledgeable other. Early work experimented on animals, and the traits were thought to be transferable to humans. Classical conditioning explores responses to stimuli. Operant conditioning uses reinforcement to mold behavior. This can be achieved directly by giving a reward or indirectly by seeing another receive a reward. Sigmund Freud and others after him developed the psychodynamic theory, which implies that the unconscious processes driven by desire and conflict shapes behavior and influences judgments and feelings. Freud developed ideas of the id, ego, and superego while developing the iceberg theory of memory and thought processes, which displays the conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. He believed basic biological instincts drive all animals, including humans. Only the evolution of society and societal standards force humans to gain control over animalistic behaviors. The unconscious protects the mind from threatening thoughts and feelings and memories by locking away traumas, unacceptable desires, and drives. Due to this, many actions have hidden purposes and meanings, mainly when behavior happens or feelings occur without apparent cause. Childhood interactions shape personality into adulthood. Although Freud's work was controversial and met with scrutiny, his ideas are still influential today. They opened a new way of thinking about behavior that has evolved. Freud believed that when an incorrect word was used in place of a similar word, saying sex instead of six, is evidence of conscious thought, unconscious thought, and continual sexual desires. These are called Freudian slips. The key assumptions of behaviorism. When studies are conducted, behaviorists focus on observable behavioral changes and disregard internal thought processes, feelings, and life experiences. Behaviorists believe all species are born tabula rasa. The mind is a blank slate without the ability to think or feel, as there have been no interactions with the environment, ignoring individual learning styles and skills. Findings in animal experiments related to human behavior as learning is the same for all species. The strengths. Experiments are lab-based, making variables controllable, easily replicable and verifiable, removing biases from experiments, making this approach scientifically credible. Classical and operant conditioning have been crucial discoveries into behavior, creating better lifestyles and treatments. Operant conditioning has been implemented in many sectors as a reward system. In classical conditioning in therapies such as desensitization to treat phobias. Limitations. Cognitive thought processes are not considered when exploring behavior ideas with reinforcement, making this a deterministic approach. Experiments carried out on animals and inferring that human results would be the same is argued to be inappropriate. There is no consideration for factors that may shape human behavior and thought, such as social, cultural influences, moods, and feelings. Behaviorism doesn't account for chemical changes or imbalances in the human brain. Certain chemicals, such as serotonin, have been linked to behaviors. The reductionist approach argues that there is no control over behavior and response to stimuli, negating the ideas of free will. The key assumptions of psychodynamics. Theorists believe all behavior has an underlying cause and is controlled by the unconscious mind. Different aspects of the unconscious struggle against one another. The id represents basic human desires and instincts, selfishness, self-gratification, and pleasure. The superego is the moral compass, seeks to be the socially pleasing, and directly contradicts the id. The ego receives information from both and finds balance. Theorists understand the importance of nurture. Childhood experiences is believed to influence adult behavior, feelings, and mental processes, as this shapes their internal processes and expectations in certain situations. The strengths. Freud theories highlight the importance of childhood experiences and memories on adult personalities and characteristics as key motivations for feelings and behaviour, which is a globally accepted viable link, leading to deeper thinking and investigation, influencing Piaget's early childhood development theories. The repression of childhood events supports the theory of unconscious defences and ego. Freudian techniques are still used today in psychology to find the root cause of many mental health disorders like anxiety and depression. The limitations. This approach is seen as unscientific as much of the work is theory-based and cannot be empirically tested. Although evidence supports some of the theories, the relative constructs cannot be directly observed. Karl Popper argued that this method makes existential statements with no way to show that the claims are false definitively. Key theorists. Ivan Pavlov discovered conditioning by accident. His work developed classical conditioning, the foundation of behaviorism. Pavlov himself was not a behaviorist. While studying digestion in dogs, he noticed the dogs began to salivate, an unconditioned response at the sight of food and unconditioned stimulus. Pavlov wondered if he could elicit the same response from a neutral stimulus, choosing a bell. When rung, it did not evoke a response. He began the conditioning procedure. The bell would be rung every time food was presented. After some time, the dogs salivated at the sound of the bell without food. The bell became the conditioned stimulus, which created a conditioned response. Pavlov also noticed the dogs displayed generalization, giving the same response to any stimulus that elicited the same sound as the bell, like buzzers. The strengths. Pavlov's work was inspirational, leading to a new way of thinking about human behavior. Classical conditioning has been used to explain many disorders and has led to a new school of thought called behaviorism. Pavlov's discovery of classical conditioning is essential for psychological advancement. The principles utilized in his studies are used to treat many mental health conditions. Exposure therapy lessens and in some cases eliminates phobias and anxieties. The development of classical conditioning principles is used in education. Repetitive learning reinforces concepts, and marketing and advertising to create positive associations with brands and brand recognition. The limitations. Comparing human behavior to animal findings is too simplistic and does not include biological and emotional factors and social expectations. It has been argued that classical conditioning is a natural biological response for an organism to survive more effectively in their environment. The response extracted is natural as the stimulus gives information about another. The bell equals food, the environmentally expected next step. John B. Watson is the father of the behaviorist approach and based his ideas on human development on observations of displayed behavior. Influenced by Pavlov's work, he believed behavior was a result of stimuli, but wanted to apply classical conditioning techniques to humans. 9-month-old Albert was only scared of loud noises, the unconditioned stimulus, and would cry, the unconditioned response. Watson wanted to create a phobia in Albert. When Albert was introduced to a neutral stimulus, a rat, he had a positive and inquisitive reaction. Watson then began the conditioning process and would create loud noises when the rat was presented to Albert, who started to cry. Soon Albert would cry and become avoidant when the rat was given to him, even without the noise, creating a conditioned response to a conditioned stimulus. Watson also witnessed generalization in Albert, who gave the same response to similar stimulus that had an observable fluffy appearance. The strengths. This line of thought could be used to argue that phobias are learnt and therefore can be unlearnt. Limitations. By today's standards, the experimentation on Albert would be considered unethical. Watson instilled a phobia into a child who previously didn't display any. Watson argued that Albert would have adopted fears and phobias naturally as he experienced life. Watson's sample size for his experimentation was too small, with a failure to produce a control group to demonstrate the child learned the phobia through conditioning, allowing for arguments that the results may be biased interpretations of Albert's response without considering biological or environmental factors such as the knowledgeable other and social learning. B.F. Skinner believed behavior could be increased with reinforcement or decreased through punishment, also known as operant conditioning, and conducted this theory with Skinner's box experiment. Unlike classical conditioning, Skinner looked at voluntary behaviors. Skinner's box, usually for rats, had an electrified base, a food dispenser, a button that when pressed would release the food, the reinforcer, and a lever which powered the electric floor for a short period of time when activated, the punisher. Skinner found that the rats learned quickly and would successfully press the button repeatedly, and the lever would only be activated a few times until it wasn't activated at all. Skinner found similar results with many species. The strengths. Skinner's box significantly contributed to psychology by establishing operant conditioning principles, influential concepts, and pioneering experimentation techniques. Documenting responses to reinforcements and punishments heavily influenced the understanding of cause and effect. Skinner's pigeon experiment, the limitations. Skinner's pigeon experiment, which used the same principles as Skinner's box for operant conditioning, demonstrated that behaviours could be learnt without reward and punishment, completely negating the need for cause and effect. Coincidental events cause a superstition to develop, showing that operant conditioning does not consider biological factors or cognitive processes. The generalization that animalistic behaviours and responses can be correlated to complex human responses showed there is no consideration for higher functioning processes, which is criticized. Sigmund Freud first developed the psychoanalysis approach. Psychodynamics is the evolution of these theories. Between the 1890s and the 1930s, Freud's patients displayed psychological symptoms that could not be explained biologically, and they seemed unaware of reasoning, leading Freud to develop ideas of the subconscious. A patient known as Anna O was suffering from hysteria, which Freud determined was brought on by childhood sexual abuse, allowing Freud to make links between childhood experiences and the unconscious's control over adult behaviour. Memories are hidden for protection in the unconscious, and base desires are concealed. He believed there are three main parts to personality: the id, primitive and unconscious; the ego, meeting the demand for satisfaction while maintaining safety, operating in the conscious and subconscious spaces; the superego, a moral compass shaped by family and society. Freud believed children go through psychosexual stages beginning at birth with mouth and sucking actions, and two other stages, anal and phallic. These behaviours were believed to be for sexual gratification, before latency around 6 years, when desires are repressed and the child becomes aware of socially acceptable behaviours. The controversial thesis was met with much criticism. The strengths. Freud's work significantly impacted psychology, inspiring thought to find reasons behind behaviours, the psyche, mental health and disorders. It is widely accepted that behaviours and motivations have an unconscious aspect. Many mechanisms Freud identified, such as repression, are used in modern language to help validate actions, making the unconscious mind plausible. Freud's work helped talk therapy to develop an attempt to make the unconscious mind more accessible to the conscious during mental health treatments, although this is deemed irrelevant for psychotic disorders like schizophrenia. Freud believed that childhood experiences affected mental processes and shaped adult behaviours, influencing Bowlby's theory of attachment and providing ideas for understanding child development. The limitations. Freud's theories cannot be validated or falsified, as they are difficult to test scientifically. His ideas are based on interpretations of a small group, meaning his work is difficult to replicate. Freud's work ignores influences outside the mind, such as cultural and genetic influences. Carl Jung further developed Freud's work, expanding on the subconscious, believing there are two main unconscious types: personal, involving individual experiences and memories, and collective behaviours and thoughts that people share. The ego is the subconscious mind. He felt a balance between conscious and subconscious was needed for personal growth and to live in harmony with others and the environment. Jung believed in 4 distinct identities for personality that influence behaviour, called archetypes, and thought they were passed down through the ancestors, part of the collective unconscious. The persona is put out into the world and influenced by different groups, socials and societal acceptance, and pushes back impulses, a protective layer for the ego. The shadow represents instincts, desires, repressed thoughts and memories, part of the unconscious mind. The anima, femininity in male psyche, connects with empathy, emotional connection, and trusting nature. The animus, masculinity in feminine psyche, has connections to stability, problem solving, and logical thinking. Jung believed these sexual identities change psychological aspects of thought based on changing societal beliefs of gender roles. The self is the unity of the conscious and unconscious mind and is represented by a circle, square, or mandala. Various aspects of personality create the self as they integrate. The strengths. Jung's work continued to influence attempts to understand the mind. The Myers-Briggs type indicator developed Jung's ideas of archetypes and has led to ideas used today, such as introverted and extroverted personalities. The limitations. Jung's work is theory-based hypothetical ideas and scientifically unverifiable. Understanding the unconscious or collective unconscious influence on behavior over other factors such as biological and social influences is difficult as there is no consideration for them. Individual decision-making and processes are completely ignored as there is too much reliance on the archetype ideas. When looking at similarities and differences, there are four main identifying factors to consider. These are nature versus nurture, determinism versus free will, reductionism versus holism, and research methods. The similarities. Both approaches consider nurture. In behaviorism, only nurture is considered, which allows for scientific study of behavior, but is weakened as there is no consideration for biological factors. Watson famously said, "Give me a dozen healthy infants, well informed, and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take anyone at random and train them to become any type of specialist, regardless of his talents, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race." Psychodynamics states that behavior is learned through childhood experiences. Both approaches are deterministic, implying that behavior is influenced by things out of our control. Psychodynamics rejects free will and states that behavior and personality are controlled by the unconscious motivations made up of early childhood experiences and development through psychosexual stages. Behaviorists argue that the environment influences and shapes behavior and observable development. Both raise the question of personal moral responsibility as there is no control over our actions. The differences. Psychodynamic theories also acknowledge the importance of nature. The id present from birth suggests a level of biological instinct and development that shapes human behavior with influence from social and cultural environments. The behaviorist approach is reductionist, simplifying human behavior and suggesting all species learn the same. This approach makes identifying factors easier and allows behavior to be modified with treatment. However, human behavior is complex. The holistic approach in psychodynamics considers the whole person's motivations, including biological, emotional, and experimental factors. Behaviorism is an empirical research method that uses lab-based experiments to control external factors. These experiments are replicable and non-biased in investigating ideas, providing supporting evidence for higher credibility. Theories of the unconscious and psychodynamic study are not falsifiable. There is no way to confirm or deny the existence of definitively. Contemporary use of behaviorism. Based on operant conditioning ideas, recognition and reward are used in many settings to reinforce positive behavior. Workplaces often have reward systems or bonuses which can improve morale and performance. Schools often use token systems to reward or even simply praise for giving input. This makes a student feel motivated to engage in lessons and valued for their contributions. Rewards will increase the likelihood of individual participation with social learning and modelling behaviour. The strengths. Strong evidence shows that recognition and reward improves motivation while individuals feel valued and seen for their efforts. This increases performance and repeat actions. Healthy competition creates positive atmospheres and feelings of community culture. Individuals feel encouraged to share in groups, increasing satisfaction in different environments and giving the sense of belonging. Limitations. This simplistic approach to behavior may not address underlying issues as humans are complex, and many factors can be affecting performance that are not covered by the behaviorist approach. Competition can be an asset in certain situations, but it can also build resentment and block collaboration, negatively impacting improvements and progression. Thus, transparency is required when rewarding. Talking therapies have developed due to Freud's theories, which Carl Jung, Melanie Klein, and Anna Freud expanded on. Talking about problems helps individuals find relief and solution. This allows for understanding thoughts and feelings that led to behaviours and exploring the unconscious motivations that potentially influence behaviour, including exploring childhood experiences and unlocking repressed memories that may be affecting individuals. Talk therapies are used to treat for many mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, eating disorders, substance abuse, and social anxiety. By trying to discover the root cause, allowing individuals to identify triggers and establish coping mechanisms to ease and even eradicate behaviours. The therapy sessions can be short-term or long-term. The tools and strategies acquired can have longevity and can be used and adapted as necessary. The strengths. The holistic approach can give a comprehensive understanding for the problems and solutions, considering past experience, effect on emotions, thought processes, and behaviour can lead to long-term change and address underlying issues. Limitations. There is no telling how long it will take for treatments to take effect, and this can be considerably time-consuming without guaranteed results. Trust, openness, and vulnerability are necessary for progression. Therapists can be very costly, especially when looking for a specialist, and there is no guarantee that therapy will be effective. With some disorders, therapy is not suitable, for example, ADHD.